Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Deck Tech, capital G here, and I'm going to be bringing you an EDH Deck Tech on Yedora Grave Gardener. Before diving in, just a couple quick reminders. One, come join our Discord group, Dungeons and Cardboard. Play some D&D, play some Magic, all formats, not just Commander. Also some Flesh and Blood, as well as a few other digital computer games. Link in the description below for that. Come join us, free to play, free to join us, and just have some fun. Also, shout out once again to my friend XD Bulldog 2327. He started uploading some raw gameplay footage of EDH to his channel. He's uploaded some Zelda stuff too, if you are a fan of the Breath of the Wild game. I count myself amongst those fans, of course. So he's done some uploads on that over the past couple years, but he's just started uploading some of his Commander streams. I myself am featured in one of those uploads thus far, so sweet, thank you Bulldog. And if you want to go check out his channel and his Twitch, all those details will be in the description below. With those shoutouts out of the way, let us talk about our deck today. Going mono green with Yedora Grave Gardener today. A green and 4 generic gives us a 5/5 Tree Folk Druid. And it says here, interesting ability here by the way, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest land. It has no other types or abilities. So yeah, your creature dies, it comes back into play immediately as a forest. How cool is that? Especially if, say, the land was already, if the creature that died was already a land, then, well, it comes back in as a land already and is still a creature. I know it sounds like a bit of a loop, but let me show you some of the enchantments in this deck to get us started, and you'll see where we're going. The big one, of course, being a good old-fashioned living lands. All forests are 1/1 creatures that are still lands. All of them, including ours. So that means if our forests are creatures and those, say, die to a board wipe, whatever, they'll come right back into play. So I've got living lands that can do that for us. Life and Limb does that for us. And we also have a little card here called Nature's Revolt. It says all lands in play are 2/2 creatures that are still lands. So using these style of enchantments will let us turn our creatures into lands and keep looping them. Show off some of the other enchantments, of course. What can we do with that? Well, anytime our land creatures die and come back, let's trigger Zendikar's Royal and get an elemental. Obviously, we want to protect our commanders, so we've got enchantments such as Asceticism, which is that our creatures cannot be the target of spells or abilities our opponents control, and it also gives us the opportunity to regenerate. Also a Bear Umbra, with whenever enchanted creature gets +2/+2, and whenever it attacks, untap all our lands, and Totem Armor. So, all sorts of ways to protect our commander already, because it's the linchpin. It makes everything happen alongside these enchantments. Before we see what creatures we're going to turn into lands, let us start with our artifacts, and perhaps the most important of them all is Blasting Station. It says tap, sack a creature, Blasting Station deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And whenever a creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station. So we have our commander. We have an enchantment that says that all our lands are creatures. And we have Blasting Station. Well, tap, sack the creature, comes back into play as a forest because Yedora saw a non-token creature go to the graveyard. So, comes back into play as a forest. That forest is a creature because of our enchantment, therefore it untaps the Blasting Station. Wash, rinse, repeat, win. Other artifacts that we're running that synergize nicely are the Claws of Gix, which for 1 mana we can sacrifice a permanent and gain a life. So, once again, potential infinite combo here, infinite life gain, or at least lots of life gain. We're running Lightning Greaves. One downside to having our lands also be creatures is that they will be sick and therefore cannot tap for mana the turn they come into play. So with that in mind, Lightning Greaves, if we're doing stuff on our main phase, we can just equip the Lightning Greaves to a land that we have just brought back into play and be able to, tap it, sack it, gain the life from Claws of Gix, wash and repeat. So Claws of Gix, Lightning Greaves, our commander, and one of our enchantments, infinite life. Helping us draw cards even when our creatures are not, even when our creatures die and come back as non-creature lands, will let us draw some cards. Once our lands are creatures, Skull Clamp them away, draw some cards, get them right back. Rocking the Soul Ring, of course, for that little bit of extra ramp. Throne of the God Pharaoh. If all our lands are also creatures, that means all our opponents are losing a bunch of life at the end of our turns. And Zuran Orb, sacrifice the land, gain 2 life. So our life total will be quite durable. Moving on to the creatures that we will be eventually transforming into forests. Let's start with Inox Survivalist. 2 mana for a 2/1 with Megamorph. You may cast it face down as a morph creature by paying 3. We can pay a green and 1 to turn it face up. If it's a regular morph, in this case he has Megamorph, so when he turns over he gets a +1/+1 counter. There are also regular morph creatures in the deck that will not get that +1/+1 counter, but that's fine. Whenever Inox Survivalist is turned face up, destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Now, it seems to be kind of weird playing morph in a deck that's not involving a certain slinking sorcerer. However, the interesting interaction here is that if our commander brings back an Inox Survivalist as a land, it's a face down card, and morph actually still works. You can actually take these face down forest lands, and if it's got a morph or Megamorph ability, turn them face up by paying the cost. Amazing synergy. If you don't believe me, check the Gatherer rulings. Ambush Commander is another way of turning our lands into creatures. In this case, they all become elves. So that's green, and 3 for a 2/2 that does this, and it also gives us a sack outlet. Sacrifice an elf, target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Running the Avenger. All our early creatures will turn into lands, which means we'll have a bunch when we cast our Avenger of Zendikar. When our other non-token creatures die, get a bunch of +1/+1 counters on them. Easy. Running Baru, Fist of Kroza. Or pretty much running like nothing but forest for all intents and purposes, so whenever a forest comes into play, our green creatures get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. Nice effect. We can ignore the grandeur part because obviously we can only have 1 Baru in play, or in our deck at all. But play a forest, give the whole team trample, love it. Beanstalk Giant. A bit of a 2-for-1 here. We can cast it as a sorcery, Fertile Footsteps for 3 mana, and go get a basic, put it onto the battlefield. And then later in the game, cast it for 7, and we've got an XX creature where X is the number of lands we control. Running Broodhatch Nantuko for that weird morph synergy that we've talked about earlier. Also, if somebody runs into the Broodhatch Nantuko, we get a bunch of insects. Rock and Budoka Gardener. Tap to put a land from our hand onto the battlefield. Then if we control 10 or more lands, it flips. It's got that weird upside down flip, where when we do flip it over, it becomes Dokai, Weaver of Life. Pay 6, tap, get an XX Elemental, where X is the number of lands we control. Yeah, just generate big things and start winning that way. Coming in with a Circle of Dreams Druid. We have a lot of creatures. Once our lands become creatures, this becomes a monster of a mana dork. Dawn Treader Elk. 2 mana 2/2, pay a green, sack it, go get a basic, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So yeah, just a way to kind of ramp up and turn, and not only get a forest from our deck, but perhaps turn this into a forest as well. Den Protector. When this is ever turned face up, we get to return a card from our graveyard to our hand. It has Morph or Megamorph, so yes, we can play it face down, or if it dies, we can bring it back as a face down forest. Either way, we can flip it over and get cards back from our graveyard. The Embodiment of Insight. Interesting landfall ability on this one. Green and 4 for a 4/4 elemental with vigilance. Land creatures you control have vigilance. Sweet, exactly what we want. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we can have a land we control become a 3/3 elemental with haste until end of turn. Now that's actually really cool, the fact that the lands can come back in with haste. So if we end up getting one of our land creatures dying, coming back in, one of those loops, the Embodiment of Insight can grant the returning land haste. Jerael, Empress of Beasts. Board wipe Dissuasion on a stick. Double green and 3 for this 3/3 human spell shaper. We can pay 3, tap, and discard 2 cards. The cost is high. But until end of turn, all lands target player controls are 3/3 creatures that are still lands. It could be our creatures, our lands that we turn into 3/3s. Or if somebody decides to, throw down a wrath effect of some sort, all that player's lands are going to turn into 3/3 creatures and they're going to go away. We're rocking both Kamals, actually. Let's start with Kamal, Fist of Kroza. 6 mana for this 4/3 human druid. For the cost of 1 green mana, target land becomes a 1/1 creature until end of turn that is still a land. And for the cost of triple green and 2, we get an overrun effect. Sweet. +3/+3 and trample to the team. Kamal, Heart of Kroza is also here. 8 mana for this 5/5. At the beginning of combat on our turn, all our creatures get +3/+3 and trample. For free, no further mana investment. Amazing. Also for green and 1, target land we control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. I like that indestructible part. Really do. Krosan Colossus, not because it's good, but because it's funny to, just have a 9/9 sitting in the wings. Lotus Cobra, another way to generate some mana with our lands leaving the battlefield and coming back in. Of course, whenever your land enters the battlefield under our control, we get to add 1 mana of any color, typically choosing green. Multani. XX for the number of lands that we control in each land card in our graveyard. Cool. And we could pay a green and 1, return 2 lands we control to our hand to return Multani from our graveyard to our hand. So if we have some face down land, if some of our creatures turn face down to lands that cannot morph, Multani actually provides us a way to bring them back to our hand and recast them face up. Just thought that was a nice little synergy. Nantuko Vigilante. This can destroy artifacts or enchantments whenever it's turned face up. Neverwinter Dryad. 2 and sack to go get a basic forest, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So again, another way to ramp up our forests. Nissa gets a forest, puts it in our hand. And then whenever our land enters the battlefield under our control, if we control 7 or more lands, we exile Nissa and bring her back in as Nissa Sage Animist. She's a very popular commander already in mono green, but also a really good fit in the 99 here. Keep in mind that if she is a Planeswalker and she's reduced to 0 loyalty, she is not hitting the graveyard as a creature. So once she hits the graveyard, she's there for good. However, the fact is we're going to need the card advantage, so that +1 is really good. The fact that she gets us a forest on ETB, also very good. Moving on to Quarian Ranger. Another way to return our face down forests, shall we say, back to our hand to untap a creature once each turn. Rampaging Baloths. Whenever a land hits the battlefield, we get a 4/4 beast. Now those 4/4 beasts will never become forests. That's okay. They don't have to. They're there to turn sideways and reduce our opponent's life totals to 0. Speaking of reducing our opponent's life total to 0, Rampaging Brontodon. When this attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each land we control. So it starts off as a 7/7, and then it gets massive. I know it's got at least the one that's on screen here has got the arena expansion symbol, but this was printed in paper. It's a sweet card. Root Elemental. A morph creature. It's 7 mana to morph this face up, but when it is turned face up, we can put a creature card from our hand into the battlefield. Steve, of course. Sack, go get a forest. It comes back as a forest if our commander is on the battlefield. Seraph, the Viper's Fang. Other tapped creatures we control have Death Touch, so our 1/1 lands are just that much scarier when we swing with them. Other untapped creatures we control have Hexproof. Nice. This card has been a monster since coming out in Midnight Hunt. As someone who plays a lot of spot removal, this card drives me nuts. Scrib Ranger. It has flash, it flies, it has protection from blue. Never know when that matters. But what does matter is we get to return a forest we control to its owner's hand to untap a creature. So once again, having a way to bring some of our face-down creature forests back to our hand. Scoot Swarm, because the landfall synergy is way too good. Again, I personally detest this card and I hate recommending it. But it fits. It just works here. Timber Protector. Other tree folk creatures we control get +1/+1. Turns out our commander is a tree folk. Other tree folk and forests we control are indestructible. Really, our commander is a tree folk. So Timber Protector will protect our forests and our commander. This is a must add if you're going to run this commander. Absolutely. Rocking the new Tireless Provisioner. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we get to create a food token or a treasure token. Take whatever you need when you need it. Generally speaking, we're going to take the treasures. If we're taking the food, that means our life total is running a little low. Tireless Tracker is also here, in this case for the clues. So clues mean we get to draw cards. We've already gone through the enchantments, of course, so let us skip over to our instance. And this is a funny one. Just out of nowhere, turn one of our creatures into a 9/9. Awakening of Vitsigazi. Target land becomes a legendary 0/0 with 9 +1/+1 counters. Even funnier if that land happens to have morph. Then it just gets bigger from there. Rocking a Broken Wings. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. I've always liked the flexibility of this one. Constant Mists. This is a monster card. So for 2 mana, we get to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Fog might be a little cheaper on the mana cost, but hey, we can sacrifice a land to put this right back in our hand. Buyback. So when we cast it, we sacrifice a land. If that land happens to be a creature, if we happen to have our commander, it literally costs us nothing to have this in our hand at all times as needed. Natural Affinity. Until end of turn, all lands become 2/2s that are still lands. Again, somebody wants to board wipe, you let them know you got it. Let people know that you have this. So if somebody wants to, exile all of the creatures, well, guess what? Rocking a Nature's Claim for some nice, efficient artifact and enchantment removal. Saw a fairly recent reprint, so I thought it was worth a mention. Some people might be scared about, giving away 4 life, but this deck can go infinite. Who cares about 4 life when we have infinite? And for a regrowth effect, running Once and Future. Running mono green, so we'll always be adamant, which means we get to return 2 cards to our hand from our graveyard, and then we exile the Once and Future. Sorceries. So, you notice that some of our enchantments and spells can turn all of the lands in play, not just ours, but all of the lands in play, into creatures. This is not very polite, but it's certainly going to end the game. The card is called Azura's Predation. And for triple green and 5, it says here that for each creature our opponents control, we get a 4/4 beast. Those beasts fight a different one of those creatures. Now, if our opponent's lands are creatures, we've just destroyed all of their lands, and we have an army of 4/4s. The game is going to end that way. Huge potential wincon here with Azuri's Predation if we get the setup right. Even if we don't, if someone's rocking a bunch of tokens, say somebody else is going crazy with their Scoot Swarms, well, boom. Nature's Lore. Search our library for a forest, put it onto the battlefield. Nissa's Pilgrimage. Search our library for 2 basic forests, reveal them, put one onto the battlefield tapped, the rest into our hand. Or, if you have 2 or more instants and sorceries already in our graveyard when we cast this, we go get 3 basic forest cards. So, good way to just thin the deck out, get our actual lands out of the deck so we can draw into more creatures. Nissa's Triumph. Double green, search our library for 2 basic forest cards, and if we control a Nissa, we instead get 3 basic land cards. So, I figure it's pretty good, and I mean, we have 2 Nissas in the deck. Rampant Growth. Go get a basic, of course. We all know it. We all love it. Shamanic Revelation. So imagine what happens when all of our forests are creatures and we cast this. That's a lot of card draw. Rocking the 3 visits again to go get a forest. And Time of Need can go get us some of our legendary creatures such as Kamal when we are ready to use them. Our Planeswalkers, by the way, Garruk, Primal Hunter. Gets us a 3/3 beast, but he's here for the -3. We're going to cast him, likely -3 him, and draw some cards. We also, of course, have Nissa, who shakes the world because we've got a ton of forests. Why not double up on their mana production? And that +1, turning our lands into creatures with +1/+1 counters and vigilance and haste. Amazing. And of course, if we somehow get to that -8, get all our forests onto the battlefield, make them all indestructible. Again, absolutely amazing if we get to that -8. And it's going to be hard for our opponents to get through to us with some of the stuff that we have. Actual lands, rocking the Evolving Wilds, Fabled Passage, and Terramorphic Expanse combo to, just thin out the deck a little bit. If you've got some of the legit fetches, toss them in here. No real need to run them, but if you've got them, why not? 28 actual forests, as well as some sneaky tech with the Guildless Commons and the Jungle Basin. Both of these lands tap for 2 mana and allow us to bring a land back from our battlefield into our hand. That includes our face-down forest creatures. High Market, of course, is here as a sacrifice outlet. Never know when we might need that. Mutable, just sneaky, low-key land that we can turn into a creature, whatever we need to. Yavimaya, because we want everything to be forests, including our opponent's stuff. And Azoteic Cavern, which we can play as a land or we can play as a morph creature. And that is what I've got for Yedora Gravegardener. Pretty straightforward, pretty clever stuff here going on too. And no, I don't have this one in paper, unfortunately, but I would love to see someone put this one together and run it. If you've got a Yedora deck, definitely leave some ideas and some of your tech ideas in the comments. Love to hear what tricks you can pull with this nasty little tree folk. With that in mind, I'm going to call it a night here, and we will see you all next time. Bye for now.